Today, some of our best segments from the global lane. Up front, VE Day. 75 years have now passed since the surrender of Nazi Germany and the end of the Second World War in Europe. Adolf Hitler murdered 6 million Jews, and the war, just in Europe alone, claimed 20 million lives. That was double the number of European deaths from World War I. Here with us to provide some insights is Mr. Dean Reuter. He's a fellow at the National Security Institute at George Mason University's Antonin Scalia Law School. Also, General Counsel of the Federalist Society for Law and Public Policy and co-author of the book Hidden Nazi, The Untold Story of America's Deal with the Devil. Dean, thank you for being with us. We'll talk about your book in a few minutes, but 75 years have now passed since VE Day. So what lasting lessons have we learned from that devastating conflict?
Well, for me, the biggest lesson is that the Americans, along with the Western allies, can accomplish anything, which seems like a poignant and relevant message in today's era where we're battling yet another worldwide enemy, the coronavirus. This one not man-made, we think at this point, but there are lots of similarities and contrasts. But I would say the big lesson is that, good triumphs over evil.
And not many World War II veterans are still with us now. So why is it important for us to honor them, those who fought, those who died? And what do you want young people to know about it?
Well, I do think there's some truth in the notion that history repeats itself, especially if we don't learn from it. And it's appalling. We recently had the 75th anniversary of the liberation of Auschwitz. It's appalling how people 40 years or younger don't know what the Holocaust was, by and large, and they certainly don't know what Auschwitz is. And that's tragic for the loss itself, but also for the notion that bad could arise again, evil could arise again, and we need to be perfectly informed about what man is capable of doing to fellow man, not just on a one-on-one basis, but on an institutional, government-wide basis.
And I know a lot of young people aren't even aware of who fought against whom in World War II. Germany, Japan, when was that? But anyway, your book about the hidden Nazi, General Hans Kammler, who was he? Why did the United States protect him after the war?
That's a great question, why they protected him. He was the most powerful Nazi, as we say in the book, that you've never heard of. He was integral to the Holocaust, meaning the Holocaust could not have happened without him. He was an architect and an engineer. He helped identify Auschwitz as the main killing camp, identified other sites for camps, then built them out, designed the gas chambers, installed the gas chambers and the ovens, literally made the Holocaust possible. From there, though, he went on to rule all of Germany's secret weapons. And as we knew Germany was going to lose the war in the final year, we wanted those secret weapons. The Western allies did, the Americans did, including the vengeance weapons, the V-1 and V-2 rockets. And indeed, we got the rocket team that made the supersonic V-2 rocket, helped put us on the moon, helped us win the Cold War with the ICBM. But everybody assumes we just sort of stumbled upon the rocket team through good fortune, found them in Germany. But as we prove in The Hidden Nazi, Hans Kammler is the general who delivered the rocket team to the United States and changed the course of history.
And of course, many people are horrified by that, to think that the United States protected such an evil man. So is there a dilemma here? Do we always have to make these choices between the lesser of two evils, maybe?
Well, Gary, there's certainly a dilemma. We talk about it at length in the book. The conclusion I can only come to is that it's hard for me to second guess the decisions made on the ground as the war was winding down. Everybody knew what the Nazis had been up to, maybe not the extent of it, but they knew they were evil incarnate. Yet everyone knew that the Soviet Union was going to be the next threat, a godless existential threat to the United States. Their way of life was incompatible with that of the United States. So we began to recruit Nazis as intelligence assets, but also as technicians and experts, not just to get them for ourselves, but to keep them out of the hands of the Soviets. So there's absolutely a moral question there. The answers don't come easy, but we pose a lot of those questions in the book, The Hidden Nazi.
And of course, following victory in Europe, we saw the rise of the Cold War as you mentioned, and finally in 1989, the fall of the Berlin Wall and the Soviet Union, eventually the fall of communism in Eastern Europe. So right now, like the United States, we know that Europe is battling this unseen enemy, COVID-19, that you mentioned. But how likely are we to see another great war in Europe? What do you think will happen in the years ahead?
Boy, I hope not. The leap from World War I to World War II in terms of munitions and killing capacity was enormous, and the technology, the killing capacity from World War II to the present is a greater leap still. So our ability to inflict harm and devastation on one another, not just on soldiers, but also on civilian populations, it has just been dramatically increased. And so that means the stakes are enormously high. So I don't think it's likely. But having said that, World War I was thought to be the last great war of world history. And a mere 20 years later, they're all at it again.
And we still have many enemies out there, don't we?
We do. There are a lot of governments that, I mean, America, God bless America, it's a freedom-loving, liberty-loving country. There are a lot of dictators left, a lot of tyrannical governments, a lot of fascist, socialist-based governments, and they're not compatible with our way of life.
Not to mention some Islamic ones that chant death to America. Well, Dean Reuter of the Federalist Society and George Mason University and author of the book Hidden Nazi, The Untold Story of America's Deal with the Devil. Sounds like an excellent book. Thank you for that, and thank you for your insights today.
Great to be with you, Gary. Thanks for having me on.
Life is better with a good night's sleep. Get your free DVD or booklet of Protect Your Sleep as the world watches from the outside.
It's a big diplomatic tug of war here in the Middle East.
Go inside the story with Jerusalem Dateline.
Israeli archaeologists are talking about a discovery that could change the thinking about the Temple Mount.
Join CBN Jerusalem Bureau Chief Chris Mitchell and get the biblical perspective on the events shaping the world.
What starts in Israel then ends up going to other places.
Watch Jerusalem Dateline Friday night at 9:30 on the CBN News Channel.
Life. It's meant to be lived fully. Jesus said it. I came to give you life. Life to the fullest. Life in your family. Life in your finances. Life in your body, mind, and spirit. Life in your everyday. At CBN.com, we're taking what Jesus said seriously. We're here to help you discover life. Life. Live it fully. CBN.com.
Replacing America's Judeo-Christian foundation with secular religion. Those efforts may be happening at a record pace in the aftermath of the George Floyd incident. Interviewed recently on the Fox program Life, Liberty, and Levin, U.S. Attorney General William Barr said the left has pulled away from the umbrella of classical liberal values that have undergirded America and have made a secular religion out of complete political victory.
That is essentially their state of grace and their secular religion. They want to run people's lives so they can design utopia for all of us, and that's what, that's what turns them on. And it's the lust for power.
Barr says that means the left is not interested in dialogue or compromise. Well, here to weigh in with more is author, speaker, radio host Eric Metaxas. His latest book is If You Can Keep It, The Forgotten Promise of American Liberty. Eric, we've seen Antifa leftists burning flags, Bibles in Portland, and then threatening to tear down a 56-foot cross in Eugene, Oregon. Churches are burned. restrictions against people attending services during COVID-19 in California. Is America forgetting its Judeo-Christian roots? Why is this happening now?
America is, generally speaking, definitely forgetting its Judeo-Christian roots. But I just want to say, I praise the Lord that these folks are doing these things, because in the past, they would hide this, and people would think that, well, they just have a different point of view. By coming out of the closet and doing these brazen, shocking things, they have really stepped into a realm where we can all see precisely what they stand for. When you burn a Bible or burn an American flag, they did both in Portland recently, you have to understand this has very little to do with Christians. The Bible is the book that gave us the West. In other words, whether you're an atheist or an agnostic or a Muslim or a Christian or a Jew, if you live in a place like the United States of America, it's because people took ideas from the Bible. These are God's ideas about self-government and liberty, about having a relationship with the Creator where I govern myself, that led to freedom and led to tremendous prosperity, human flourishing, thriving, the elevation of human dignity. So this is the sort of thing that Christians should be the most alarmed in a sense, but everyone who has a stake in civility, everyone who has a stake in being able to have open debate, to figure out what's actually best for everybody, what's best for the country. Christendom in Europe over the last 2 millennia, that's what gave us the possibility of creating something like the United States of America. We used to know that as a people, and even not just Americans used to know that. Everyone in Europe, I mean, Churchill would quote the Bible. They knew that when they were fighting totalitarianism, whether it's Hitler or Stalin, they knew what they were fighting. They were fighting a godless, tyrannical view that sees human beings not created in the image of God, as the Bible declares, not created as something that God adores, but on the contrary, as something that can be used for anyone's ends, for the state's ends. You're going to attack churches, you're going to attack Christians. Hitler did precisely the same thing. In my book, Bonhoeffer, I talk about it extensively. He went after the church. He was very wise in the beginning, very canny, but eventually the gloves came off, and you saw the kinds of things in churches like Martin Niemöller's church. The Gestapo would come in there just to threaten them. We see that happening with certain governors in certain states.
Well, let's talk about a couple of those. Let's talk about a couple of those governors in California. Newsom has restricted gatherings in homes to less than 10. Now, that's had an impact on life groups, home Bible meetings. In China, and I've been there a number of times, the Communist Party doesn't become overly concerned with house meetings until they reach 50 or more. So this is worse than China. Well, what do you think?
In the United States of America, we are being reminded of what it means to be an American. And again, forgive me for referring to my book, but it's why I wrote my book, If You Can Keep It. I said, we have forgotten what it means to be an American, and we have forgotten to recognize overreach, to recognize when somebody like a governor like Gavin Newsom does something like that, we should all instantly say, that's un-American. You can't do that in America. And by the way, we won't abide by that. We are a free people. If some of us have forgotten, others of us remember, and we will scream and shout until people understand you don't do this in America. You have no right to do this in America. You have no right to say that worshiping God is unnecessary, but casinos are necessary. That's arbitrary. It's the kind of thing that you see in third world dictatorships where, you know, they persecute whoever they want to persecute. We're supposed to have justice for all. We're not supposed to have a double-tiered justice system. All of these things are wake-up calls, mainly for the body of Christ.
Finally, then, Eric, what is the solution? I know Bonhoeffer said politics are not the task of a Christian, yet he was involved in the resistance against the Nazis, so that's why he was executed. Should Christians be more engaged in politics?
Christians should be very engaged in politics. The idea of making an idol of politics, that's another story. But any Christian who says, I'm not going to vote because I can't decide neither of them is perfect enough. If you don't vote, you, Mr. Christian, Mrs. Christian, you are on the hook for whoever gets elected and whoever does tremendously harmful things. If you care about the poor, we are commanded to care for the poor. Who you elect or who you allow to be elected is going to put out policies that are either going to help people get on their feet or are going to harm them and keep them trapped in perpetual bondage to the state, which is what the Democrats have done for over 50 years. So I'm sorry to say, we must get involved. And the only reason we have governors like Governor Newsom in California is because evangelicals didn't vote. They're not registered to vote. They didn't vote. This is a scandal. And anything I can do to help people see that is bad theology. That is not biblical theology. You must get involved. God calls us to get involved, if not for our sake, for the sake of all the others who are going to be affected by these horrific, ultimately Marxist policies that elevate the state over the individual and that do not understand what American freedom was or is, and certainly don't want it to continue to be.
Okay, Eric Metaxas, speaker, radio host, author. Your latest book is If You Can Keep It, The Forgotten Promise of American Liberty.
On October 1st, 1961, history was made when a tiny station began transmitting the first signals of the Christian Broadcasting Network.
CBN, the Christian Broadcasting Network.
And now, a new era has begun with the all-new CBN News Channel.
Just moments ago, the Iron Dome intercepted an incoming rocket right on the Gaza border.
And ministering in this area, spiritual warfare is definitely involved.
A 24/7 news network, bringing you the news you want from a source you can trust.
In Kenya, 40% of the medical services are actually provided by these Christian hospitals.
Let's talk about the economy.
Believers here are joining together to win people to Jesus Christ.
All your favorite shows now in one place. Go to cbnnewschannel.com to find out how to get the CBN News Channel on your TV all day, every day. CBN News. Life is better with a good night's sleep. Get your free DVD or booklet of Protect Your Sleep today.
Life. It's meant to be lived fully. Jesus said it. I came to give you life. Life to the fullest. Life in your family. Life in your finances. Life in your body, mind, and spirit. Life in your everyday. At CBN.com, we're taking what Jesus said seriously. We're here to help you discover life. Life. Live it fully. CBN.com.
The progressive push is on to defund police departments in some of America's largest cities. In Minneapolis, the city council says it will move to dismantle its police department and create a new public safety system. In New York City, Mayor Bill de Blasio says he'll shift police funding to youth initiatives and social services. Attorney General William Barr warns police defunding will lead to vigilantism and more killings. Well, here with us is Mrs. Elvita King. She's evangelist and director of civil rights for the unborn for Priests for Life. Mrs. King, thank you for being here again. It's so good to see you. So what do you think of this whole effort to defund police in Minneapolis, New York City, elsewhere? What will it mean, especially for people living in minority neighborhoods already devastated by riots?
Well, what we must do, even with the riots, with the COVID-19, people not understanding, if I should wear a mask and social distance, but I need to go out and protest and I'll be next to people, how does that work? So we're in the midst of some chaos and confusion. I want to remind people not to be fearful, not to be tearful, don't panic, and do prayer instead. And get the correct information. Find out from the White House has some good guidelines there for the riots and for COVID. Your governor should have that, your mayors. And so we do that. Thankfully, the church never closed during COVID nor during the riots. The church is us. We are the church. So there is information there on Facebook and Twitter and that type of thing. And also, as we worship and read our Bibles and pray, we can get guidance from heaven as well.
And that's the best guidance of all. So former Vice President Joe Biden actually agrees with the president on this. He says police should not be defunded.
What we are having now is a situation where violence and unrest and lawlessness occurs. And so Mr. Biden also understands that there must be some order so that America can be safe. He understands that. The President of the United States has been saying that all along and demonstrating by walking with his Bible, by inviting people in to pray with him in the White House, that God is in control of America, not the president. One nation under God, in God we trust. The president says we all bleed the same. So I'm glad to know that Mr. Biden realizes if you take away order, there's going to be a problem.
And I know there are injustices committed by police in non-election years, but it seems that larger scale protests, racial divisions are often accentuated in election years. I'm thinking of the Rodney King riots, 1992, Michael Brown and Ferguson in August 2014, and then I think there were riots in Sacramento, Milwaukee, and Charlotte in the summer of 2016, election years. I'm not saying it doesn't happen in off-election years, but it seems it's accentuated. So what do you think of politicizing race relations?
You can observe two things. During election years, the gas prices go up and go down, and they manipulate those politically, believe it or not. Also, maintaining order is very important, but if you can do something that shifts the attention of the people out of order into chaos during an election season, then the people are more vulnerable, and then it becomes a money game. Who has the most money to get out the ads to calm the people down? However, there's a God in heaven that is not ruled by human mechanics. And so I just ask people to continue to seek the Lord. Examine your faith. And as these things occur, don't be moved. Some things we have to just agree on and vote for. The sanctity of life from the womb to the tomb. Not just the babies in the womb, the veterans, the old people, the sick people, the different minority groups. People may have money, but that doesn't mean that they're not people. They're still people. So my uncle, Martin Luther King Jr. said, when we value the human personality, we won't kill anybody. So we need to vote for life, for stable families, for safety, security, for jobs, the opportunity to worship as we choose. And I'll even say not worship as we choose. We can't force people to worship, but we should not demand that people not worship. And that's a difference that we sometimes miss.
And I saw a meme on social media the other day. It was a photo of actor Denzel Washington, had a quote in it. I'm assuming it was from him. It was about eliminating racism, and it said, an innocent man was murdered by a corrupt cop. And he struck out the words black and white. So what needs to be done now to make more progress against racism in the United States?
Well, my uncle Martin Luther King Jr. also said, we may have come over on different ships, but we're in the same boat now. So many of us, or at least descended from immigrants, you know, the Europeans coming out of Europe. Some were indentured slaves or servants or that type of thing, or trying to run from some legal matters and all of that. And we either shipped here or came here. In Africa, our own African brothers and sisters sold us to white slave merchants and mercenaries. So they did that together. We all get here in America, and there's already a family here called Native Americans, and they were mistreated sometimes as well. So here we have a human condition where we all need to recognize, regardless of skin color, see skin color. We can see God is creative. We have colors in our skins, our clothes, flowers, everything has color, but we're not supposed to fight over it. So we're not color blind. We can see. But we have to see each other as brothers and sisters. Acts 17:26 says, God created us of one blood.
One race, the human race. Mrs. Elvita King, evangelist and Director of Civil Rights for the Unborn for Priests for Life. Always good to talk to you. Thank you for your time and your insights.
Life is better with a good night's sleep. Get your free DVD or booklet of Protect Your Sleep today.
I'm Ephraim Graham, and this is Studio 5. Cruise with me as I discover the good things happening in the world of music, sports, television, and movies.
The fact that Ryan Coogler was going to be directing the film, I knew that something special was going to happen.
We'll chat with artists at the forefront of entertainment and explore the connection between popular culture and faith.
I asked my pastor, I said, well, does that mean I'm supposed to be a preacher? He says, well, no, you already have a pulpit.
Watch Studio 5 Wednesday night at 9:30.
Remember for a moment what it was like to be a child. You believed every story you were told. You saw a world full of endless possibilities. What stories will the world's orphaned and at-risk children believe? We believe the Bible tells the only story truly worth believing. We believe that every child should have the opportunity to dream, the chance to take challenges and turn them into possibilities, the chance to stand on the promises of God, to recognize their place in the greatest story ever told. They have their whole lives ahead of them. Theirs is a world of endless possibilities. They are looking for a story to believe. We will tell them that story. Will you join us?
A cult of death and destruction is rising from the far reaches of the world to right here in the USA. Death to America, death to police, death to the unborn. Disregard for human life metastasizes like cancer. It begins with children in the womb, then spreads to children outside the womb. Children are treated like property, enslaved and or sexually abused. You see, if you don't protect the unborn and value the sanctity of life, then all lives are no longer relevant. Life is cheapened. It's an attitude of no lives matter and eventually evolves into disregard for the lives of the elderly. How many of them needlessly perished from COVID-19 in New York and New Jersey nursing homes and elsewhere? Celebrating life, honoring God, and treating all lives as sacred is the key to creating a more virtuous and just America. Well, that's it today from the Global Lane. Be sure to follow us on Facebook, iTunes, SoundCloud, YouTube, Parler, and Twitter. And until next time, be blessed.